All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm so glad to talk to you today. It is Thursday, and I'm especially excited to talk to you, Carlos Childs. Carlos, thanks so much for joining me again. Friend of the show, Carlos Childs.
Awesome, awesome. How? It's always great to be here with you. So glad to just be in leftist spaces and in community. So always glad to be here with you.
It's great to see you, man, and it's been a while. It's been too long. I was thinking about you, too, because you watch my live streams. I don't know that you watch all of them. You watch a lot of them, and you see me with Arlen back and forth. And what I was thinking, man, I love talking to Carlos because we pretty much agree, and I don't have to, start pointing out this and questioning that. So we'll have kind of more maybe agree. I'm going to find areas, as you know me, Carlos, I always find that little wedge where maybe we don't agree.
I hope so. I hope so. I always like that little combativeness that we have in us.
It's good to see you again, and I'm glad we talked off air. I won't get into all the personal stuff, but glad to see Carlos looking good, doing well. Really, really happy to see that. All right, let's get right into it, Carlos. You know my program. You know the way I do it. I always center. I really try to center victims. Actually, on Monday was the first program in a long time I didn't center a Palestinian victim of Israeli violence. I centered Sonia Massey, an American woman who was victimized by police. She was victimized. She was murdered. And so we may get into that a little bit because I thought Kamala Harris, who's the main focus of today's program, in fact, the question I pose is it okay to vote for her? Many people say, well, that's a stupid question. Of course it's okay. How could it's not okay not to vote for her? But Carlos and I are going to talk about whether maybe it really isn't okay. One of her finer moments when she called the family of the victim of police killing, a police murder, Sonia Massey. We'll get into that, but right now we're going to go back to what I always talk about, or almost always, Gaza. It's murder, it's genocide, Carlos. I can't. This is where I would hold my nose and vote for Kamala if I felt she was going to take on the Israeli lobby and take on Bibi and take on the Israeli military. We see a very, very conservative estimate, 39,500 killed. This is the deadliest place on earth. Another 35 yesterday. Just any off-the-cuff remarks or thoughts on that? We'll get into Kamala in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what you said was like correct. We are not just watching a genocide. As people who live and pay taxes to America, we are funding a genocide. We are one of the main backers as a country of of genocide, of colonialism, Zionism. Like we are fully funding the mass murder of innocent people who just want to live in peace. That's it. They just want to have a live in their country in peace without being persecuted for nothing. And yeah, it's just it's even crazy thinking that you literally have a foreign lobby who has a hold over American politics to be able to put money in our election system, be able to change bills, have just everything catered to them, and then we are told as Americans who are siding with the Palestinians that we're the wrong ones for siding against the genocide. It's literally mind-boggling.
So this is from Anadolu Ajansi. That's the Turkish state news agency. And the numbers come from the Palestinian Authority. You hear me say it all the time, Carlos. Those numbers are conservative. Time after time, they've been proven to be accurate as far as they go. But they don't go that far because there are people buried under rubble. There are people who disappeared. There are Palestinians who may have died from causes that you can't say, well, they weren't shot in the back of the head. And we've seen mass graves with some Palestinians who were shot while their hands were bound. So there are people who die from starvation, lack of medical care. Maybe they're not attributed. It's not attributed to the Israeli
Hunger.
occupation, but we know there are 40,000 minimum, another 35 killed. Yeah, you were going to say something. I cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, you literally have people starving to death, and we don't know if that is in the calculations attributed to the genocide, or they treat treat that as like just another factor of someone's death. And we've seen scientists come out and say the actual death toll could be around 200,000. Palestinians dead from the genocide going on. And you're right, it is multiple factors. Just because you weren't directly shot or a bomb directly dropped on you, it could be the aid that's being blocked, and you're dying of not having medical supplies, or dying from starvation and things like that, or dehydration, or just the different diseases. I've seen articles that have said that they're finding like polio in the water now, just because of the like unsanitary conditions that people are living under.
So I've made the point, Carlos, on this program that I feel I can understand better how the Holocaust occurred, how so-called good Germans could let it happen, and I can say that that's what I see happening in the United States. Although you point out correctly, we're aiding and abetting it, just as the Germany was responsible, ultimately, well, not was directly responsible for the Holocaust, Israel, but with our support, responsible for this. And I say to myself, well, what, I'm Jewish, but what if I were in a position where I could have or should have, or I was in Germany, what would I have done? What do you feel like we have obligations to do? I mean, I do this live stream every now and then. I'll get off my fat butt and go down to DC and, stand with people waving Palestinian flags or with Code Pink. But I mean, is that enough? Is there something else? I don't know. I'm sure you ask yourself this question too.
I, I do, because it's like, I think what makes it harder is that we live in a political system where normally going out protesting, going out civil disobedience, going out blocking ships that are supposed to transport bombs and things like that. Normally that raises enough discourse to where you see a change in policy. The problem is when you have groups and agencies who will, or groups and organizations who are funding politicians to say, I don't care what the people are saying, I want you to act this way, that we're being ignored just in mass. And as you see, we have statements put out by the vice president, or other people who represent office, saying like, okay, why are people protesting? You have literally governors comparing college protesters to the KKK and Nazis. Like, we we're living in a time that really, it's hard to even say, how do we move things forward? And a part of it is divesting from the major two parties that are kind of fueling this, because then you start looking at other areas and other parties and saying, well, you're not acting this way, so maybe I do need to change who I vote for. But also knowing that it doesn't stop at voting, it goes past that to, once you vote for someone different, making sure that they stand on the promises that they made you as well.
Well, we've heard, and I guess I'll ask, I mean, the question I ask, is it okay to vote for her? Is it your view that if Kamala, well, let me say it this way. Do you have optimism that Kamala Harris, and we've heard, from her insiders, we heard from a pro-Palestine State Department official who resigned. I played the video that she had heard reports that Kamala was outraged by what Israel was doing, that she was the voice of compassion, of empathy for the Palestinians. Does that take you anywhere? Does that say to you, okay, well, I guess I should vote for her?
Not at all. It sounds good in an article, I guess, because that's all. Because we can also say Biden also technically showed compassion when he was talking to people. It doesn't relate to policy. It doesn't change anything. It's like cussing you out with a smile. I Do I feel better because you smiled at me at least, or do I say, what do I get from that? Because you're not done, you're not stopping actually cussing at me. So I'm not optimistic. And by her statements that she put out about the protests that was going on in DC during Netanyahu's speech, and based on what her husband said about her, being saying that she will fully back and support uh, Israel. Her own statements about Israel has a right to defend itself, even when it's not defending itself, it is openly causing a genocide. All of that kind of wraps up into, this is the same thing that we got with Biden, just packaged differently.
Yeah, you're where I am too, Arlen. But Arlen. I'm sorry, Carlos. I apologize to you, Carlos. I apologize to you, Arlen, as well. I mean, you both deserve your separate identities. You
Oh
should
yeah.
not be combined. I should not confuse the two of you. And definitely apologize. I've been talking to Carlos, so it's just I'm so used to Arlen, right? So, but
No,
what
totally
you
get it.
said is not something he would say. I want to show you different viewpoint, but I think it's not completely absurd, Carlos. So I want to get your take. These are includes a comment from Arlen. So let's talk. Let's show this if I can. I want to get my screen a little bit. You know, I always struggle a little bit of tech. Hey, I just want to say, defense of me, Carlos. This is hard. It's
It
hard to
is.
do this. I gotta be moved. I always tell you that, right? I'm always like whining, and I never do that. But it's kind of self. You know, this is first world problems, but there are a lot of little moving parts. Okay, so here you go from Arlen. This is a quote: "Give Harris a chance. We don't know. She might really surprise us, like FDR did." And from another viewer, listener, fan, a friend of the show,
Mhm.
you'd have Harris self-immolate by engaging AIPAC before the election. So this guy's point, this viewer's point is they're saying um, she could be a stealth candidate, right? She could be playing rope-a-dope, right? Like I'm all for Israel, but then when she has the real power, she'll say, no, 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 we're going to stop this. No, no, no more of the genocide, no more of the bombs. It's all over. Stop it, Bibi. You're done. So, how do you respond to those comments? And I ask you partly out of selfishness, Carlos, Arlen, Carlos. I ask you out of selfishness, Carlos, because I don't always have a good answer. So I know you will,
Oh yeah.
maybe.
So maybe. So I look at it and say the first comment of give Harris a chance. She has had chances. She has had chances on the world stage. She if she wanted to go out and make a press conference at in 2 minutes, she could do it. All eyes would be on her. She could go out and say we need to stop funding Israel. We need to not just say and demand a ceasefire, but let um, Israel know you will no longer be receiving aid. You will no longer be receiving bombs. Support causes like BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction movement. Like she can do that now, and she can talk on that now to show people that I am not the same as Joe Biden, as Trump. I am actually going to stand up for human rights around the world. She hasn't done that. She does the theatrics of I won't go to the Congress address that Netanyahu did, but I will meet with him privately. Like I will say that I told him we need a ceasefire, but chose not to say that I had told Netanyahu he needs to stop blocking a ceasefire because a lot of these ceasefires it has been Netanyahu and Israel who have said, no, we don't agree to these terms.
100%, 100%. And this administration, just to jump in real quick,
Oh, yeah,
has
definitely.
consistently lied and said it's Hamas that's responsible. That's just a crock. It is Israel that has stopped the ceasefire. No question about it.
Yeah. And
Over
then
and
and,
over.
and then the craziness is for Vice President Harris to come out and say that we want to make sure that both that Israel feels at peace when there's a ceasefire deal. Netanyahu has said in multiple terms that Israel will not be at peace until there is no more Hamas at all, which means there will be no more Palestinian state at all either, because there, as Israel has acted, they conflate every Palestinian with Hamas. So those two just don't go together and act like. And also at this point, there is no two-state solution because they have destroyed what little area they would have made for themselves to have a state at this point too. And to the second comment, um, I don't think that we've ever seen that really. Like we've ever seen politicians say, "I'm going to take all the money from a certain special interest group, and then I am going to then go the opposite way of the special interest group that has funded me all of this money because they are scared of that group saying, oh, so you basically stole from us. Now we're going to fund everything against you as well." And just
Yeah, I just
we
also want to just make a comment there. I mean, I think that the billionaire class and their apparatchiks, their lobbyists like APAC, they are very, very careful. They're going to be real sure there's no wiggle room before they support you. So I always sort of laugh at like AOC and Bernie cozying up to the money people. AOC having that town hall with the Zionists and trying to, I don't know if you saw that really ugly, embarrassing spectacle. Like she's thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll, again, they'll think I'm on their side. They're never going to trust her. She's
exactly.
never going to be present with their support or with working class support now either, because we all know she's a phony. If you're not with them from the beginning, if you demonstrate at some point that you actually do have compassion, empathy for the underdog, for their victims,
Exactly.
you're dead to them. They might use you. You could be their useful idiot for a while, but in the end, they ain't gonna give you the reins.
Yeah, why take someone who's with you some of the time when I can go for a true believer and get someone who agrees with me every day of the week? And then also to that point, we saw that here in Maryland with what happened with Donna Edwards, who we saw she gave a comment or voted or took like a vote against one of the Israel fundings, or just saying like they should be a little more gentler in what they're doing,
That's
and
right.
they put in $1 million
That
against
was the
her
end. She's
her
done.
right.
She's dead to them.
Yeah,
Exactly right. Right. So you might as well face it. If you have
they have a short leash.
progressive leanings and you've demonstrated them, you're never going to get power through the establishment, only from an outside strategy. But what about maybe a little bit of a better argument? And I like your thoughts, because I agree with all that. I don't trust her. I don't think if she has a chance, she'll be better. I don't think she's going to turn on APAC. But what about the boogeyman right here? And I don't use that term purely ironically. I mean, this guy is scary. Let's face it. Let me play this clip real quick here from just a week ago or so.
Get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
All right, so he's trying to say, oh, no, I'm going to get everything good. But obviously he's making an appeal to some sort of fascism, tyranny of Donald Trump. So is that an argument that it's okay to vote for Harris? We got to stop this guy. I mean, this guy is so bad. I'm smirking because this is where I am, Carlos. This is my problem. Whenever I look at Kamala Harris's record, I'm like, forget it. I can't vote. It's not even possible. Not going to happen. But then I look at Trump and I look at what some of his supporters say and I look at some of his comments and I'm like, oh, wait. Oh, my gosh. This is really, really bad stuff.
It is. I mean, hmm. I will say this. I do think it's okay for people. I understand people who look at it as I'm voting for harm reduction. I'm voting for against him. I don't want open fascism in the country. I understand that. And I will say yes, I think it's okay for people to vote for Kamala Harris. What I'm not voting for her and I disagree with it, but I think it's okay. Where I will say about Trump's comments, I mean, yeah, he's fascistic, shows very much dictator tendencies. But I go to a quote from Nina Turner. It's that you have neo-fascism, which is it kills you fast. I always say it's like a bullet train towards a bomb. You see the bomb and you know that the train's moving fast, so everyone is like alerted, galvanized. We got to stop this. Something has to happen. Whereas neoliberalism, as she says, it kills you slow. That to me, I compare it more to like a cruise off of a cliff. We may not, some people may know that we're heading towards a cliff. Some people don't, but everyone's enjoying the party, and that's the main thing. It's just having fun. I feel calm, and whatever happens, happens. And I think the problem is both lead to the same outcome. It's just that one is just more in your face up front than the other.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analysis, and I agree with you too. If you vote for Harris, you vote for Harris. I'm not going to criticize you for that. I'm understanding the situation. But for me, given the existential threats that we face because of Democrats, right? Not just because Republicans, Democrats, and genocide, ecocide, endless war with Russia, I can't personally feel good about myself if I vote for that to continue, which is where I come down. And you made a really good point about the trains, because I remember when Barack Obama was elected president, all the pro-peace protests started to dry up. But he didn't end the wars. He got us out of Iraq, it's true, but he pivoted to Afghanistan, which was a disaster.
Yeah.
So
Drone
when it
strikes
was a
and all.
Republican, the left was out there saying we got to stop the American-backed killing, or the American army killing in the Middle East, the torture. When Obama comes out, all these drones, right? It's okay.
Because I feel calm. I feel more. I feel it's like I heard someone make a good example of it. Is that a lot of the people who were in that Bernie Sanders movement of we need change, weren't all like progressive or leftist people. Some of them were just liberals who want healthcare. That's it. Like it was just that, and a lot of them were okay. I mean, I'm fine, whoever it is, but I just want universal healthcare. And once they felt like that's gone, cool. I'm fine with just a Democrat because what is it? I go back to brunch. I go back to relaxing. I'm done. I take my hands off because for a lot of Americans, voting is what they feel like is all should be required. And I think in most areas, in most other countries, I'm not saying that voting is the end all be all, but it does go a long way because because other countries don't have the money input and all the lobbying and things that we have, to where if we were in different countries, that may work. Just voting for someone who stand on certain values that they can follow through with it, but we don't have that here. And I mean, it. How do you
But
feel
don't you
like
feel?
this
Let
is
me ask you
giving
this,
Hillary
because
Clinton
you're
vibes again?
going. I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, you're a young man. I'm an older man. I mean, I feel very. I hate to say this. I mean, I have a good life personally. You know that. You know me. We are friends, but I feel hopeless about the future. I really do. I feel bad. I just. It's like you just said. Voting doesn't seem to make a difference. We can vote for Obama. We can vote for hope and change, and we don't get it. We get despair and the same, not hope and
I think the
change, right? I
problem
mean,
is
there.
too.
So I don't. I feel awful right now about that.
Yeah.
And I look at you and I feel almost worse, because I'm like, I'll be dead in 30, 35 years if I live, that long, but you got another 60, 70 to go.
And I think that that's sadly the state of affairs, but also the one positive is that that gives a lot of people more time to change things and make it better, and hopefully they start getting on the right track. But I was going to ask you, does this feel again like 2016 again? Like we're going Hillary and Trump. It's Kamala and Trump, or Kamala and Trump, and I feel like we're getting the same thing of like we're telling you, look, life won't get really better for you, but look, we can stop him from getting in office. And it feels like the new Democrat play is we're just not the other person.
Well, I think that's a great point too, Carlos, because I agree with that. And the problem with the rally around Kamala, rally white dudes for Kamala and all that spectacle, which
So weird.
I hate that so much, because the dividing us along, slice and dice politics, the sorority sisters that she had in that first video, right? And then the white women and the white dudes and the black. Has she done a black men for Kamala
Yeah, she had
yet?
a black man one. Roland Martin was one of the people who I'm not a fan of him either, but
Oh man, he is another disappointment. I mean, these.
yeah, but you know what? And I'll speak on the like kind of identity politics things because you know me. I'm someone I don't kind of bash identity politics because I also think like nurses are an identity, firefighters are. So everyone can be a identity. But when it comes to the way this has been done, white guys for Kamala, black men for Kamala, all that, it's not even like, hey, I'm talking to these different racial groups about here's policies that are like
Yes.
affecting you all. It's kind of
Yes.
like just, hey,
Yes.
support me because me being in power shows it's good for you. And I think the only reason that people come to that conclusion is that as far as the parties have been concerned, they have sold, especially the Democratic Party has sold black people, men and women, of all you're going to get out of us is representation. We will not help you policy wise, so you better be happy about representation because that's all you're getting. And I think they have gotten voters such in a mind hold of, I need to support you just so I can see someone who looks like me, because I won't get anything else but that.
So I was going to ask you about something I thought. I personally liked what Kamala did with respect to Sony Massey. We'll get to that because now we're talking about the white dudes, which is on me. I thought this was a pretty interesting little piece here in Slate. We are cringe, but we are free, it was so cringy and, hey, know your privilege and step back. And I'm like, hey, if this is such a way to divide the populace, because if you're a white working class, person in Ohio or someone, and you don't have you have to work 3 jobs at 7-Eleven or whatever, your life is pretty crappy, and you're being told you have privilege, you're not going to react well to that. Let's put it that way. You're not going to get a lot of votes. If the person who says that ain't going to get a lot of votes. That said, it looks like Kamala is getting a lot of votes, and I think she's probably, I'll throw it out here. I said this kind of sad, but looking at the latest results, I think she's going to win. Whatever, this seems to work. It didn't work as well for Hillary. I don't think Kamala Harris is a likable person from what I've seen. I don't want to play that card because I don't really care if someone's likable. But she's, I think, far less unlikable, and her record is far less checkered than Hillary's was. So, and people know Trump and they don't like him. But this is exactly what you said, right? Look, identity-based unity over transformational policy. Why do people fall for this? People said to me, like when Joe Lieberman, I guess he was like, I was like, I'm not going to vote for that. I don't give a crap if he's Jewish. Or people say, well, Bernie's Jewish, so that must be exciting for you. I'm like, I don't give a crap. I mean, I'll vote for Bernie. I like his policy, but because he's Jewish. And so, is it different because African Americans, black people, because is she really African American? Which pisses me off too. Like people say, well, she's not black. No one's ever said she's not black. The question was, I always thought, is she African American because her dad's Jamaican and her mom's Indian, right? Indian descent. And the answer is, of course she's African American because her father is a descendant of people who were stolen, were kidnapped and enslaved and taken to Jamaica. And so she's African. So I always thought that was a stupid argument. But I guess my question is more, as an African American man, as a black man, do you feel like, because you're not you personally, right? And a lot of black people do very well in this country, but more aren't doing very well, or certainly relative to other groups. Do you feel like, yeah, it is kind of exciting? We had Barack Obama. We have, we could get Kamala. It's kind of exciting.
I think I'll answer it in 2 parts. I think as far as Obama, Kamala, I think for them it is somewhat of a, like, we're finally breaking this barrier that for a lot of black people, we have in the back of our mind that America as a society has limitations on black people, which we've seen that there are many limitations on it. And when one of us breaks through the barrier, it's like, whew, finally one of us made it. So we are hoping that makes it easier for more of us to make it as well. I think the problem with that analysis also is that for a lot of people, it stops there. It stops at the, you look like me, thank you, I'm done now. Because I believe because you look like me, you have my best interest in heart. And I always tell people, look at Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas does not, in my opinion, have black people's interest in heart when he does some of these Supreme Court rulings, but he looks like us. But when you talk to people on that individual level, they'll say, oh yeah, no, he's not like us. It's just like how it's an old saying of like, all skin folk aren't kinfolk, meaning just because you look like me does not mean that you have my best interest at heart, you care about me, or you know what I'm going through. And I think that's the problem, though, that the Democratic Party has sold to people, is that, look, the Republican Party won't do anything for you. We won't really do anything for you either, but at least you have someone who looks like you. So, I mean, would you rather be lied to by a white person or a black person? And I think a lot of people.
And I think it's a great point. I heard Breonna Joy Gray, who I often say is one of my favorite, like she's probably my second favorite podcaster. She's probably the second best podcaster out there, right? I mean, number two. So she said this very thing. She said, a lot of these black Democrats, and she was referring to Clyburn, who's really been a problem, right? I mean, he's not been good. He's been a problem. But she said, hey, this is the thing. If you're a black voter in South Carolina, like your alternatives aren't very good. It's not like you got some white guy who is really good for you. I mean, white politicians have lied to the black communities all across the South and everywhere else, for years and years and decades to get their votes. So it's just like you said. I mean, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. All that said, and this isn't a specific indictment, I think we see so often people do fall for this identity politics. Look at all the women who voted for Hillary. They were crying. They thought she would be great for them. She was terrible. Policies were awful for women. They were worse for women than for men. And, Clyburn says you have to vote for Joe Biden. And I'm like, what? Why am I listening? When have you acted in my best interest? But
exactly. And I think a lot of people don't. I don't know. Is it that they don't conflate those two? That's the same as if you look like me. So, and also I think it's a lot of people who aren't involved in politics on the day to day. It's one of those, like, I'm passively involved in politics, so I don't really know anything. It could be a lot of people who don't know anything about Clyburn, just some of his civil rights history, and think, oh, I'm sure he has my best interest. They're not watching his votes. They're not seeing, like, does he actually, who he takes money from, especially being one of the few, or one of the many, who takes the most money from healthcare lobbyists. Like, people aren't watching that. People are just saying, I voted for you and I'm trusting that you're doing what's best for me. And I think that, one, that is the problem. But I think also, two, it's kind of like, what's the real cause that people aren't involved in politics? Is it that people are just voting and not following up on the politician, holding them accountable? Or is it that people are following up, holding them accountable? It's just that never pans out to anything. So people are just disillusioned, like, I don't care. And real quick, before we change the topics, I do want to address that comment that you made about the rural people and the whole white privilege topic. I think that's a thing that culturally we're going to need to continue to move forward, because there is a sense of privilege that white people have. It's just like how you see the conversation now on certain news outlets around Kamala Harris, which I think also rallies her identity politics support, of people saying, oh, she's just a DEI candidate. And that's when it's like, if she was white, no one would say, if she was a white man, nobody would say she is a DEI candidate. They would just say, we don't like her because, or him because of X, Y, and Z. And I think things like that, things like the Sonia Massey shooting, things that we see on, like, a day-to-day basis of just how hateful some people can be towards Black people, does state the sort of privilege that white people do have of not being questioned about certain things, being able to walk freely and not have a sense of police around them that you feel, like, scared about.
No, I get you. I hear you. I just think that this is one area we actually don't see eye to eye, and I don't have all my thoughts marshaled on this one, but I do think what I'd rather see politicians try to do is rally folks together and within class lines, intra-class. I think there are so many areas where African American, working class Americans of all colors, whatever ethnicities, share. And I think, share an interest in healthcare, in good jobs, in good policing. It isn't only, yes, absolutely, disproportionately, police are much more likely to kill a Black person than a white person, but they do kill white people too, wrongly too, not to the same degree. There's not as much fear, but there is some. And so even there, I think you can try to bring people together, or you can try to divide them. We talk about police, so I do want to get into this, because I personally did think this was a positive thing that Kamala Harris did. I don't want to be only negative about her. We're going to talk about a different, somewhat analogous situation where police wrongfully arrested a San Francisco man, and then ultimately he was convicted by her office. We'll talk about that after. But does this, I mean, what's your reaction to the Sonia Massey story and specifically Vice President Harris's response?
Yeah, I think as far as the Sonia Massey killing of by the police officer, I think it was disgusting, abhorrent, tragic. Like those aren't even words that honestly can sum it up. And I think and it's sad to say this. I think just over the years of seeing these videos of just black people being just senselessly killed by police, it's a sort of like numbing that your mind gets used to where it's like, okay, that's the same thing that we always see. And I think just the it's clear to see that she was having mental health issues and that she was handled in such a way of like her life had no meaning at all to this.
It
They
was
did not care.
awful. It was a snuff film. I didn't want to show the video. I didn't show it because it was too, painful. I showed some stills. I don't know if you saw that program. I do feel, Carlos, again, that Vice President Harris, and maybe our standards are so low that when somebody just does the right thing and picks up the phone, we're like, oh, wow, that's really good. But she did do it, and it did make a difference for this family.
So that's the part I'll say that how is that was that nice for the family of her calling? Yes. I look at that as Joe Biden calling George Floyd's family after he was murdered by the police. Did it equate to anything? No. But it makes you feel good for like it makes them feel good for the moment, which I understand. I I I don't hold that high at all because you calling them does not change anything for anyone else. It doesn't make sure it doesn't happen again. It just means that you called them because you felt bad, which we all feel bad about it. What are you gonna do? What's the policy point? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And to me, I what you said was exactly right. We are so used to nothing that even the slightest hint of like, I'm sorry that this happened makes us feel like, okay, finally somebody did something. But at the end of the day, I think we have to sit back and realize that's not doing anything. Like words are meaningless at this moment when action needs to be taken.
Well, again, go to play the other side of that. When she did have the power to lock people up, she abused it, Carlos. And you shared this story with me. I was not aware of this. She was a aggressive pro-cop prosecutor in San Francisco, and her record was no better as Attorney General, which I've gone into at length. But this from Vice is, it's awful. What are you going to say? This is an innocent man, Jamal Truelove. I'm going to play a little bit of the video. I want to thank Carlos for bringing this to my attention. You can see it's Dateline 2019. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but let's play this.
Never in a million years I would have thought that they were going to charge me for Sell's murder. I never talked to no detective, no police officer, no DA, nobody.
Just arrested and then charged.
Arrested and charged, that's it.
Was the first time you saw Kamala Harris in person the day that the verdict was issued?
She showed up at the two most pivotal times in this first trial, and me being convicted and me being sentenced. She wanted to be present for a celebration of a conviction.
That's what it felt like,
So
a
I'm going to
celebration.
stop that for a second, because I find that that really I find obscene, right? She wanted to be present at the celebration of a conviction. And this is like almost like movie stuff, right? Like the prosecutor, they want to get the conviction. I saw a movie, it was a fictionalized account of I think it was Leo Frank, who was a Jewish man who was convicted in Atlanta wrongly of murdering a girl who worked for him in his factory. And it was a prosecutor who was like, and it was so racist, the whole thing. And they said, there's a black guy. This was in the Jim Crow South. There's Atlanta. There's a black guy that might have done it. The janitor. Who do we go after? And he's like, I'll get better headlines. It's no big deal to convict. When he uses the N-word, I'm not going to get. He's like, nobody going to care. But if I get this rich Jewish guy, man, every paper in the country is going to blare my name over it. So who was guilty meant nothing in that. And it seems like here and they say innocent, he's innocent. He was exonerated. But she's there just, hey, I got my scalp.
Yep. I got my headline in the news. People saw my name, saw conviction, and they know it's my job to get the conviction, and that's it. And, and it this to me needs to be highlighted more when discussing Kamala Harris, because um going back, how you have the black men, black women for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris's website to this day doesn't even have a platform on it, on what she's running on. So she's not sure. Honestly, she's running on vibes of just, don't you think I'd be better? And it's like, your record does not prove that you've been better. There have been different accounts of Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor that has shown she has worked on locking up parents for truancy, marijuana convictions. She ran as a more aggressive prosecutor than a more progressive, than being progressive, and a lot of things that can now be said in California, or during her time as a prosecutor, is that the courts overturned her stuff to make it to make things be done the correct way, because she was doing unlawful things. So I mean, we have to look at her whole record and not just have the thought of, here's what I hope she would be like. And I think that's a lot of it, is that people are projecting what they want her to be as to what they feel like she will be.
We've got Carlos Childs with us. It is Halitics. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe. Definitely want you to do that. By the way, if you want to join us, we are going to take a few calls. If you call, if you don't call, I can't take your call. 240-242-5646. Would love to hear your thoughts. Just want to share this. We only have a limited time with Carlos, so I don't want to use all the video, use it up for the video. So let me just show this from the article in Vice, which, by the way, is linked in the description of today's program if you want to read it. No physical evidence linking to the crime. And then the eyewitness this is an amazing, so the eyewitness was paid, and it was all really for the political benefit of Harris. And just one more point on this, just so people know, because I think a lot of times we hear these stories like the prosecutor didn't turn over some evidence that might have been, useful to the defense, and they violate this. But people say, well, they were guilty. But True Love wasn't guilty. He was exonerated. And Harris's actions cost the city a verdict of $13.1 million. Not only may not have paid it, and there's always appeals and all that, but a jury heard what the prosecutor's office did, the DA, and they said the city's liable because this man spent, how many years? 6 years in jail. He was almost killed. He was almost shivved to death in jails, by the way, that were prisons overpopulated because Kamala Harris, U.S. Senator, when she was Attorney General, Kamala Harris point blank refused to reduce overpopulation, which court after court said this is dangerous. These are dangerous conditions. Take some of the non-violent offenders, the marijuana smokers and the dealers who never committed any violent acts. Get them out of there.
All because she wanted some work. Well, because she needed a workforce. It's ridiculous.
Where do you... I was really taken by this, Carlos. I feel like these two really embarrassed themselves. I want to go to Sanders and AOC because I don't know about you, but there was a time, and I think it was when I first started to work with you, when I was like, these are like our best and brightest. This is our real hope. And now they both endorsed Kamala, but they didn't. They started out by being totally the only ones who thought Joe Biden should still be president. And I feel like they really set back the movement. I don't know what your thoughts are, but do you have some you want to share?
Same. No, I feel the exact same. I feel like for them, it was just, they would have supported whoever the Democratic Party put up. Just because it was Biden at the moment, they supported Biden. If they would have turned around and instead of Kamala Harris said Hillary Clinton's the nominee, we would have said we have to support Hillary. It just would have been whatever. And I think the elected left isn't or I'll say on a congressional level, isn't really left. They're just the most left when it comes to policies that they support. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't support moderate or conservative policies that their party puts up. They may vote against it sometimes, but it's always funny enough. It's always just enough of them who won't vote against it that it still passes. But it just seems like they're not really about making a movement, which has always upset me about the difference between the left and the right. It seems like the right, the people who are the most extreme, do not care if they disrupt the party, make people upset, yell, scream, hold up votes, change votes, whatever. But it seems like for the left, it's very much of like, no, we shall cause no chaos. We shall not change anything because we need decorum. We need everyone peaceful and respectful because we don't deserve anything and we just want to make everyone happy.
I so agree with that. They took out, the Freedom Caucus took out several different House speakers when they didn't do exactly what they wanted. Every Democrat, with one or two exceptions, voted for Nancy Pelosi, and I believe it was unanimous support for Hakeem Jeffries, who is awful. I mean, he's so not progressive. I mean, forget, even if you're an AOC or a Rashida Tlaib or a Ilhan Omar, I don't know how you can vote for this guy who is totally in for Israel. He brought Congress members to Israel. He's got total support from AIPAC and from Wall Street.
He called Israel like a borough in New York, like
yes,
compared to another borough in New York. Like,
was that him or was that Eric Adams? I think it was Jeffries, right? It was. I for some reason I thought it was Jeffries, but it was Adams, who also has been unfortunate. Well, I don't know. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, it's New York, and that's who you get. We did get Jamal Bowman, but then we don't have him either. So
the same party that will require any type of left to say you must fall in line with us in order for us to support you will also not do anything to people like Hillary Clinton or others who will endorse against sitting Democrats to say, what are you doing? Why are you getting involved at all? So it's like, even when the left within the party says like, we will follow all the rules, but we're still going to speak out, but we won't challenge incumbents, we won't support people challenging incumbents, all that, the left still gets challenged, and then the establishment of the party is like, hey, well, what do you want me to do?
They're so weak, they're so unwilling to. And I want to get you this quote, because Carlos, this will teach me never, ever to second guess you. If only that were the case. I'll always second guess everybody. That's what I do. But it was indeed, and I want to show this. And it's a pretty awful quote, by the way, from Jeffries. And this is before he became, House. I guess he was a I don't know what his role was, but they just go from one awful person to another. Steny, right, was just the worst. And Clyburn's in the leadership now too. So here's what Jeffries absolutely, Carlos is right. In 2020, he told AIPAC that Jerusalem is the 6th borough.
Correct.
So that's not democracy. The capital of another country, which by the way is an occupying genocidal state, violating every international norm, and he's saying that's where I go to get, to make sure they're happy.
At this point, honestly, America might like the way that our politicians act. America might as well just be like a colony of Israel. Like we might as well get our stuff from them, and then they limit us to what we can do here, because it doesn't make sense. Why are we? None of our domestic policy, none of how we act should, or foreign policy should, be dictated by what another country says that we want. How are we? And the framing of America by people has always been, we are the superpower, we are the shining beacon on the whatever they want to call it. And we are openly letting Israel tell us that you will not get the aid across the border that you want to get. You will keep funding us no matter what. You can put up all the ceasefire agreements that you want to. We don't have to listen to you. And we, as America are saying, thank you, I'm so sorry. You know what would you like us to
Well,
do?
and we can start a war with Iran, and you're going to
Yeah,
fight it.
we're gonna
We're
fight
gonna,
their battles at this
yeah.
point. It doesn't make sense. And then also one other thing I do want to highlight here is that the issue I see too with it being Trump versus Harris is that with Trump, as we saw back in 2016, there was more of a push for people to say we need better and we're going to fight against this. We are going to make sure that we have more ideas out there that we are going to fight back, and people were more interested. When you had Obama, Biden, it's like all the same people who are like, no, we need to fight to make sure that we have X, Y, and Z go to sleep and say, I'm calm now. And I think that's also the problem that I'm juggling with Harris being in there versus Trump is that if Trump is there, things are going to get worse. If Harris is there, things are going to get worse, not to the same magnitude, but also the things that do get worse, it's going to be less of a push against it. It's going to be very much of a push that, so what? I mean, it's her. It's like people are barely even talking about how they talk about how horrible Trump was on uh immigration, and he was horrible. Biden has deported the most Haitian immigrants, and that's not talked about. It's kind of seen as, well, what are we going to do? Criticize Biden? The other side would be worse.
Well, and one of the fears, right, and it's a legit, is like when Trump says, well, you don't have to worry about voting in 4 years. But what kind of, how much does our vote matter if Biden basically runs through the primaries without a challenge, even though it's clear he's demented, and then he's replaced by by someone who's anointed, who was a terrible candidate in 2020, couldn't get any support at all.
Didn't
And
make
now
it
everyone rallies. The professional left, you can see here, group we both used to work for, they're right in for Kamala, right? They're Bernie. When Bernie found the group, Bernie laid the case. We must defeat Trump. That's it. Bottom line, end of story. We have to defeat Trump. I mentioned PDA, Progressive Democrats. They did a little survey here. They're all in for Harris as well.
It's weird.
Where do we go if you don't like this? I don't know where to go. Carlos, do you have any place to go?
I think people need to start looking outside of the duopoly in the two parties. Look outside of organizations that are continually only bolstering a single party. Because as we see with these organizations, their main goal may be, yes, to get a progressive in office, but it's only a progressive through the two-party system, which means if the party puts up someone who's not progressive, they're still going to support them because they're saying they're better than the alternative. And my problem is, you can be lesser of two evils, you're still both evil. And at what point do we say we have to stop the evil in general? And I don't it's like, also, nothing would hurt any of these organizations to say, we're not going to endorse at this moment, we're going to give it some time. Like, we're going to give time to see what platform you do. Hold some type of leverage. And it's like the left does not believe in holding leverage at all.
Well, I put up these results from the PDA straw poll, just the most recent ones I could find. And, they're almost unanimous. There's almost complete support. And these are the rank and file activists. This is another reason it gives me, it's not just the leadership of these groups, but the rank and file activists. Every name there is Kamala for president. If you look at the next list, I saw two. There's two for Jill Stein. And there was another one that had RFK Jr., who I think would be as bad or worse than Kamala. He's that bad. I think, I hate to say it, I always wanted to believe that my policy views, if people just understood them, if we could rally. A lot of people don't agree with us, Carlos.
I won't say that. I'll say policy-wise, a lot of people agree with us. I think electorally, people are set in they believe in I won't say that they believe in the duopoly. They see that as that's all we have. We have Republican or Democrat. So at the end of the day, I can only pick one of the two. They do not see third parties as viable. I think because people still see it as, I want my vote at this moment to mean that this person could win. and not see it as my vote for like Green Party, is to build the party to a point where they can hold political power. And so I'll say policy, like, because if you ask those same people policy wise, what do they agree with? They will agree with the same things that we do. If you ask them, will Kamala Harris put these policies in place? A lot of them probably would say no. But they're at the conclusion of it's either him or her. So I kind of throw my policy out the trash for a minute. That, unfortunately, that's what we
Well,
got.
I agree with you pretty much on policy, but it seems like people aren't willing then to vote based on policy. And even I just highlighted the failures, in my view, of the progressive activists or organizing left. So let's look at some podcasters who are supposedly to the left. And I never thought the Young Turks were that far to the left, but let's use them as an example. They've been very, very critical. Cenk and Anna there have been very critical of Biden. But if you look at these are just the captions. I just stole this from their YouTube page. There's nothing about policy. These are just the recent, right? It says latest. I didn't cherry pick nothing. I just went with the latest videos. Latest. Vance's sex with sofa rumor. Trump demands Jewish votes. Trump runs scared. He had some, apparently he was with the National Association of Black Journalists. I don't know about that one conference. And then record, and they do give a criticism, right? I told you I was going to show. So there is a little talk about her record in California. But if you look, it says her record is a mixed bag. Her record was no mixed bag. It was bad. She had a bad record as a prosecutor. They're trying to spin it as, oh, it wasn't so bad, really. We're not seeing even our few, what we hope are on our side, on the left side, podcasters, they're not even taking her to task. I know Brianna Joy Gray really has talked about this, and I think powerfully so.
Her, Sabby Sabs, RBN, like they have been talking about supporting, or just people supporting third parties, Jill Stein and so forth. I think, or Claudia De La Cruz with PSL, things like that. I think the problem is that the certain, like TYT, remember, like the head of it ran for president under the Democratic Party too. So again, it's that institutional mind of this is the party. So at the end of the day, quote unquote harm reduction. I don't really believe that voting for Democrats over Republicans is quote unquote harm reduction. I just think it's calming. It just calms you to deal with some of the harms that they're going to put up. So I think that's what it is. I think that we have to look outside of the institutional left that we have been presented with a lot of the time, and start looking towards these the leftists who have been kind of pushed out of the party to say, you all are the ones who maybe we should start listening to as far as podcasts and journalism and things like that.
100% on that. And here's another guy I go after a lot. And you mentioned Sabby, so I'm going to give her a little stuff in a moment. But here's Kyle Kulinski, who, according to Jill Stein, for whom I'm voting, endorsed her. He didn't. I went through that, Carlos. Remember we talked about that before the show. But look at how he's carrying water for Harris. All of them. Brutal attack by Tim Walz on Trump. Now, I'm not saying they're wrong to do this, but where's the policy? Destiny, I don't even know who. Do you know who Destiny? I don't know who Destiny is. Isn't there a singer named Destiny? Is that who that is? I don't know.
No. He's like he started on like Twitch doing, I think, like video games, and started getting into like politics and stuff like that. But he's a Zionist. He's like a Zionist Democratic Party stan. That's it.
Was there a singer named Destiny? Am I right about that? A woman singer, maybe? No.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I know Destiny's Child, but that was like the group.
It was a band called Destiny?
No, Destiny's Child. That was the group.
Oh, Destiny. Well, that's Beyonce, right? Didn't she start?
Yeah, that was her group.
By the way, did you watch my show yesterday where I highlighted her performance? And she's wearing this costume. I mean, it was pretty over. I think very risque. I will never get offended by anything, but it was
performance at Kamala's rally.
No, how was that? Was it?
I mean, it was to me, I find it kind of pandering to an audience. Like, it's like, hey, policy, I'm not doing anything for you, but here's some entertainers.
She's a billionaire. She's a billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, to me, I am, and it's an old quote from Malcolm X of like, in the Black community, we have been sold that celebrities are our thought leaders, and it's like at the end of the day, you're just a celebrity. I need someone who has like background knowledge or lived experience of the issues to be able to talk to me about the issues and how to move forward. And a lot of times, the celebrities are getting fed information from either a person, a party, or special interest groups who hire them to do these things. So I don't trust it too much.
Well, I've seen over and over with celebrities, and whatever, their color, whatever, gender, they're rich. They're famous. Life is good for them. They're not going to want to upset that apple cart too much. The gravy train that keeps bringing them more and more sales. And like an example, Tom Brady, like he retired from football. He's incredibly rich, but now he can go on TV and make even more money. But if he started, really criticizing the NFL and slamming the way, the athletes, not him, but most of them, leave with brain damage. He probably has it too, CTE, and they're treated like cattle. Then that's the end of the gravy train. So you can't, if you take on the Leviathan, right, the monster that's made you big, rich, large, and in charge, if you take on that Leviathan, you bring yourself down too.
Yep, exactly.
So here's from Kulinski, brutal attack, humiliation, Jon Stewart torches deranged Republican, J.D. Vance can't stop essing on childless women. I mean, there's no policy there, Carlos.
No. Like, and my thing is, look, it gets clicks and views, so sure, do you. But also, like, I would rather hear attacks of Trump on policy and things that he wants to do to say this is why people should. Even his dictator talk and fascist talk about that stuff rather than like just like little weird headlines that are like don't really mean anything to
It's
a lot of people.
clickbait, right? It's
Yeah,
clickbait that I fell for, basically. No, you're right. And we try, even the dictators talk, which by the way is policy. And I've pointed out that at least when it comes to Ukraine, Russia, I think his policy is better than the Biden-Harris ticket, which is just let's have an endless war with Russia.
It's weird. It's weird that the quote unquote Democratic Party is no longer seen as the anti-war party. It's seen as like Republicans are kind of more anti-war, which goes back to who's funding people as far as the military-industrial complex. They fund both. It's just that, and honestly, the only reason in my mind the Republican Party has an issue with the Ukraine war is that Trump had a good relationship with Putin and Russia. So now it's like, hey, we're not gonna touch that. If Putin didn't like Trump, they would be on the same page. Republicans would be the same way if we need to fund Ukraine to stop the war, which a lot of Republicans still are.
So I think you're right, but in a way, I don't care. I just want that to end. I want all the billions and billions we're pouring down that rat hole and destroying Ukraine completely. And it could have ended if there was negotiations, but the West didn't want it to end, so it didn't end.
Yeah.
I just want to show these last few clips from Kulinski that I cut out of his with the screenshot. And what I found interesting is the bottom two. So you see here, Buttigieg slaps around Fox host, and they scream socialism. And to me, this really shows a fundamental betrayal of the left by Kulinski. Pete Buttigieg is awful. He is a gentrifier. He started his career right as a corporate consultant when he was mayor of a small city. He pushed out poor, struggling, working people. He's a phony. He did a lousy job as secretary, or he's been doing a lousy job as secretary of transit. And yet here he's highlighted, he's no progressive bones in his body, took down Bernie, but he's completely highlighted positively by Kulinski. And then even worse perhaps is there's Jen Psaki, bottom right. Again, positive vibes for Jen Psaki, MSNBC, full-on propaganda network right there with Fox. And Kulinski is just, hey, just parroting what they have to say. And
yeah, I mean, there's no fighting or there's no hyping up of people criticizing people with a left analysis. Like, to me, that is what should be framed more is okay, someone who's on the left. For me, it'd be more someone outside of the duopoly seeing like, hey, this is how you combat certain talking points from the leftist perspective. But it's like we're taking any chance we can get of like, hey, I just want to see the other team get hit. Honestly, I think we're getting more into a period of people treating politics like sports, like football. I don't care what happens. I just want my team to win. At the end of the day, I just don't want the other team to get a win. So I'll hype up Pete Buttigieg slapping around or saying something that can get like a ooh moment from Fox uh, interview, but I won't show the protest that people are doing in South Bend of the black people who were at the hands of racist police and Pete Buttigieg doing nothing, or to how you have you have people protesting in about Gaza. Like, it's like all the energy for some reason on the left is just now to just look. I just want to feel good, and feeling good just means I give up, and I'm just happy to see the right do bad. It's kind of sad, and
I
I think did it start with like is part of the reason because of Bernie Sanders to say after he was done being like, I'm done with all of this. I'm just gonna fall in line. And I think a lot of people felt like if he's giving up, what hope is there for us as just regular people to do anything?
It's true. It's really sad. I think your sports analogy is spot on. I also think just the idea, right, and just the idea that this is the best we can hope for. There's no more. Bernie's given up. We'll just take what we will just take it and be happy. Well, Hakuna Matata. And I just wanted to show this. We're coming towards the end of the program. It's always great to talk to Carlos. We've actually gone over the hour, but that's fine. There's a lot of important stuff to talk about. But just, what you were just saying, it's just to own the other team. And I was taken by this headline in the Post a couple days ago. Climate leaders say Harris has lit an electric spark. More than 300. So we've talked about a lot of different groups, the progressive organizers, so-called OR, Our Revolution, PDA, Progressive Dems of America, some of the so-called progressive podcasters who are all lining up for Harris. And then you see this with these environmental groups. And again, it's aspirational. It's hope. Oh, Harris said something good about Palestine or against or for a ceasefire. So we know she's going to stop the war. Oh, she acknowledges climate change. So therefore, we want her to be president. And there's no there, Carlos. There's no there.
Weird that like there's not like no like these organizations, and I guess I can't even answer that from myself because I'm thinking like you could even wait until there's a policy point that you could at least point to and say, this is why we know she's better on climate change, because people were saying that about Biden of hopefully he'll be better. Then they always point to the Inflation Reduction Act and the Build Back Better of the roads and things like that, but then don't talk about the approving of pipelines, the more oil drilling that we have. Like, it's like we're not it's like we're like picking and choosing what we can say to make us feel like someone is going to be better. And it's like that wishful thinking, like, I hope you're going to do better, so I will project that on you and until you prove me wrong. And I think we should come from the opposite end. I think you're going to do worse than what you may do until you prove me that you're going to do better.
Well, look, even here, her campaign spokeswoman said, or spokesperson, I don't know, maybe it wasn't a woman, I shouldn't say spokeswoman, an official, clarified she would not seek to ban fracking. So there, it's right there. I mean, and I really want to look into that. Where's the ambiguity? Where's the feeling? The last point I want to make here is we take so little, or people on the left take so little, and they read tea leaves and they say, oh, but she said this once in a speech before this group, so therefore she's on our side. You know who doesn't take that crap? The corporate elites, the lobbyists. They own you. She goes behind closed doors and we don't know what she tells Netanyahu. It's like when Hillary spoke to those Wall Street big shots. And it was off the rec. Nobody gets to know, right? It was all, the speeches will never be released.
And you know what else gets me
So
too is that
they get ironclad commitments or they won't support you. They're not going to write your checks. But we are just expected to vote for people who have convicted the wrong person and celebrated it.
and it seemed like whatever. And then it's even when the donor class was pressuring Biden to get out, which I even give them credit, because the left didn't even want to, the elected left didn't even want to do that. But for them to say we're going to withhold money from the Biden campaign, they switch. Harris becomes a nominee, and you see these millions of dollars go. The CEO of Netflix giving millions of dollars to their campaign, and it's kind of like, so do people not think that they want something from this? Like they're not doing it just because they want to see representation. They care less about representation. They care about what's going to affect their pocket. So it's like we don't see it as they're funding her because they know you will defend us. It's billionaires and millionaires going on news talking about how if Harris gets in, one of her first things should be getting rid of Lena Khan, who has been strong on antitrust. And she could listen to them and get rid of them. And there's been reports that her office has had issues with how some of these decisions by Lena Khan has come out. So they set up the stage. They give the donor class policy while they give people representation. And the problem is that we as people need to take the policy from the donor class and say, you will no longer be listening to the donor class. You will be listening to the base of the party.
That's a really important story that you just highlighted, Carlos, one I was not familiar with, and I'm going to ask you for more details off the air. Just text them to me because I want to discuss that more. But where, again, Harris and the Democrats will bend the knee to the donor class, to the billionaire class, while, just providing propaganda to the voters. I was going to skip this video, but you said some things I think are really important, so I want to play it, especially about how the support from people like billionaires like Reed Hastings of Netflix. Why don't we say to ourselves, if these people, they're not my friend, they don't have the same interests as I do, if they like her, if they're behind her, then maybe that's a red flag for me. Maybe that's a reason I should not support her. Just like when the oil and gas executive supported Hillary in 2016. Maybe that's a red flag. All right, let's play this video. Here's AOC.
I'm going to say what a lot of these folks aren't saying. I'm just going to say it. If you think...
I want to stop her there because she's so much younger than I am. I don't, but when she does that stuff with her head and she does her hands and she's always doing this, is that appeal? Do you feel like that is appealing? Because to me, it's kind of a turnoff. I think it makes her look unserious, and I'm not trying to be disparaging to her or come up with something, but I'm wondering, is that like code for like Gen Zs or something? I'm cool. I don't know. Do you know?
It's a little bit of that. I find it to be fake because like I know people who generally talk like that and have those type of mannerisms. For her, it seems like it's more manufactured because she thinks it makes her seem cool. And it's like, if that's not how you naturally talk, don't talk to us like that, because that doesn't win you anything.
I just feel like it's not serious enough. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? I feel like
I get what you're saying.
This is a serious business, right?
I do think it's also a generational thing where to younger people, it shows more like relatability.
Yeah. Well, regardless. So the caption from this is Insider AOC says Democratic donors and elites do not want VP Kamala Harris. So you'd see the K. So she was obviously wrong. But this is when she's talking about Biden still, why she supports Biden. This is before Biden withdrew. That
there is consensus among the people who want Joe Biden to leave, that they will support Vice President Harris. you would be mistaken. And I'm
So
going to
what
say
she's
that.
saying there is, Carlos, hey, if you don't like Biden, and you think Harris would be this great option, you're wrong. The people, the centrists who are pushing out Biden, they don't even want they don't want Kamala. So she's kind of saying, hey, Kamala's really good. If we could get Kamala, then that would be okay. But the Mr. Moneybags, Obama, George Clooney, whoever's pushing out Biden, they don't want Kamala either. That's what she's saying. I'll play just a little bit more.
Because if they're going to come out and say all their little things on background off the record, but they're not going to be fully honest, I'm going to be honest for them. All
right, so her honesty is they don't want Kamala either. But obviously she's completely wrong. They're perfectly happy with Kamala.
And that's my question towards her, is that, like, her coddling to the establishment of the party, is she not getting invited to the meetings? Like is she not being briefed on the memo of the party plan? Because it seems like she is just left out there to not know what's going on. Because even her whole thing of, like, I'm gonna keep my support for Biden because the donor class doesn't want him, and I don't want to stand in line with the donor class. The donor class wanted Biden up until the debate performance. So you were in line with the donor class just until they saw, oh, he can't win. And then you said, no, we're still going to go with him. And then the same donor class ushered in all the same money right to Harris, because they say, we didn't have an issue with anything that Biden was doing. We just didn't like the person. We just thought he couldn't win.
We thought he'd lose. We just didn't want to lose. We want to win. And they were 100% right. I mean, you can't say they were wrong about that. Biden was doing terribly in the polls, and now Kamala's up. I showed polls yesterday. She's probably winning right now.
Yeah, I think some of that is the honeymoon period of just new candidate, new face. And also, I think some of it is the genuine feeling of representation, finally, for not just Black people, but for women and for South Asian people, to feel like we have someone who represents, who I won't say represents us, but someone who looks like us. And I think that's her genuine bump right now. Who knows if that may change during the debates or when she starts
I think it's going to stay. I think she's going to keep it, Carlos. There's no new Republican convention, right? Trump got his RNC get boost. It's done. It's over. J.D. Vance has proven to be an anchor for Trump. Trump's saying stupid things on Laura Ingraham's show and elsewhere, which he is often wont to do. It kind of tells you how awful Hillary was as a candidate, that she lost to this clown.
Exactly.
But the Democratic elites, the same ones who support Biden, the same ones who support Harris, the same ones who support the candidate that AOC supports, they were much happier to lose to Trump than to win with Bernie.
Oh yeah. And there was one congressman who talked and said the reason that all those same elites and donors, they didn't choose Biden because they thought he could beat Trump. They chose Biden because they thought he could beat Bernie Sanders. The thing was, they do not care about winning against the other side. They just care about beating the internal left that they had. Because we even saw it when Trump was in office. Their main thing was they just wanted to raise money. And then once they get in office, they continue some of the things that Trump did, even when Biden was pushing for an immigration bill that looks like Trump would have wrote it himself.
Right. And Carlos, one other point on that. The way they were all in to defeat Bernie is interests me, because Bernie spent that 4 years after Trump was elected, or after he lost in the primaries to Hillary, he was such a loyal foot soldier for the Democrats. He was campaigning for Hillary. He was speaking out for Hillary. He was constantly denigrating Trump at every opportunity. It didn't matter to the donor. They don't care. We don't trust you. We'll never, ever trust you. We're going to take you down. We're going to beat you with a senile old man. Yeah. I guess he wasn't as senile then, but an old man who's not that smart, never distinguished himself, not that, it doesn't matter.
A two-time presidential loser that they pulled and said, you will be the person. And then it was, okay, we're just going to let him be the person. And I think the problem is that for all the criticism or all the reports that we hear about, well, Bernie Sanders, he didn't want to be seen as a spoiler. He didn't want to be seen as the reason that Trump won. you were going to get that regardless. Just because you stood in opposition, you will get that regardless. Just like if Hillary loses now, even though the left is saying we support you, we support you, we support you, they will say, oh, it was because of the Jill Stein voters. It was because of the Arab population. It was because of the people who support Palestine. It's their fault that things are going to get worse. It's not because Kamala didn't put forth a progressive platform to win those voters over. It's seen as our job as voters is not to have issues that we vote on. Our job is to fall in line.
100%. Carlos, it's always great to chat with you. I learn a lot. I think our listeners, viewers do too. We'll be in touch. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thank you so much again, Carlos Childs. That's going to do it for me. Tomorrow's a free-for-all. You take care, my friend.
You too. Thank you. Thank you.